Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities PairOfNormal Guys podcast. I am your host, Frater Crow.
And I am your co-host, Daniel James.
If you are listening in right now, whether listening live, streaming the episode after the fact, or you've downloaded it to your device for on the go, we do want to thank you for your support. But make sure you click the like, share, and follow buttons on whatever platform you're listening from iTunes to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Google Podcast, or Amazon Podcast. We do air across absolutely everywhere, so feel free to listen where you feel most comfortable. But the more that you hit those buttons, the more that it moves us up the podcast community rankings, more it allows us to do with the show, more people that discover the show, keeps you in the loop as new episodes air, and gives you unfiltered access to our archives. There is something for absolutely everyone in the supernatural and the paranormal community. If you are a return listener to our show, thank you so much. If you are new to our show, stick around and we hope you enjoy. We bring you an episode every other Thursday night, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking about all sorts of topics of paranormal and supernatural, from ghosts and cryptids to aliens to weird conversations like tonight, where it's just mysterious unsolved mysteries, which we look forward to diving into. And like I said, yeah, to share us around, hit the like and share button, and spread the word. We appreciate your patronage. So Dan, we have an interesting one tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So folks out there, this is something that has popped up called the Man From Taured. Now, I don't want to say just popped up. It's not like some of the most recent internet craze mysteries. This has actually been around for a while and had taken place in the 1950s. And, didn't pop up right then and there. It was about 10 years later that I guess this really started getting talked about from what I researched. And then it's been around for several decades now, which is very interesting. So we look forward to jumping into that. Discussing the possibilities of what might have happened, how this could be possible, and some different ideas. If you're listening out there, if you go to Spreaker.com or through the Spreaker app, which is Spreaker, that's who we host through, that'll allow you not only to listen to the show, but to also interact and engage with us during the show through the instant messenger feature. So you can leave us comments, ask us questions, and be involved with the show, which we always certainly, promote and want to see you guys and gals out there doing. So feel free to jump on there and talk with us during the show. Let us know what your thoughts on this weird unsolved mystery are. But Dan, when did you first come across this?
It comes up in circles when you're like a big fan of like the Twilight Zone. And people who are really fascinated and passionate about stories that are, like an episode of The Twilight Zone, which is what this strikes me as, this came up and in discussion, and, it's almost like it is taken right from an episode.
It really does have a feel to it like The Twilight Zone, and you nailed it, because it's funny that you say that. When you think about it, it reminds me of different episodes just because of the weird factor, how different and bizarre it is to most urban legends or myths or things of this nature. It has a lot of validity to it, but still cloaked in mystery and obscurity. And it's just funny that it is a hidden gem that most don't know about, but yet it is also aged.
The reason why I think it's unique is it's like a one-off. It's like an isolated incident where you have sightings and you have people who report having an encounter with a strange person or like a strange being, but this is isolated. That nothing like this has really occurred that I can find since.
Yeah, I mean, there's been similar incidences, as you said, where lapse in times, crossing of realities where things don't seem to make sense. But this specific individual, folks, has never been seen again. No one has ever heard of this country again. It is truly a one-off, and I'll set up kind of the scene for you, and then we'll start to dive into the tell itself, and then Dan and I's different interpretations of what could have happened. So the Man from Taured is a incident that happened in the 1950s. I believe the year was 1954, as reported, that a business-like gentleman got off of a flight at Japan International Airport, and he was carrying passport and identification for a country called Taured. Now, as the immigration specialist had gotten the passports and he's logging everything down, he noticed right off the bat that something was strange about the passport. The color to it was different than anything he'd ever seen. The symbolism and pictures on the front of it were different than anything he had seen, and obviously that stood out to him. Being, a specialist in this field, he sees a lot of passports, and he had stopped the gentleman, started looking in further into his credentials, and noticed it said that he was from somewhere called Taured, Taured. Now, he had seen a lot of countries, but he had never seen Taured before, so this had really stuck out to him as what's going on here. So he started asking the gentleman questions. Well, the gentleman instantly became kind of thrown off by this. He spoke not only French, but spoke Japanese as well, and he had told them, well, I don't understand why I'm being questioned. I've been through this specific airport 2 times already this year on business. And sure enough, in the passport, there were stamps from that airport that he had already traveled through twice, along with many other stamps of other countries and areas that he had traveled to. But whenever they thought of the idea, he got a supervisor and brought a supervisor over. They looked further into it. He thought of the idea, well, let's show us where you're from, because we can't find it anywhere. Maybe it's a dispute of different land names. Sometimes countries are battling over names of territories. They were giving him the benefit of the doubt, and whenever they had pulled up a map and showed this gentleman, he had pointed to an area near Spain that on our maps is Andorra. Now, he became confused as well as they did, because he said, that is where I'm from, but I don't understand this name. I've never seen this name before, talking about Andorra. Meanwhile, that had been a country for a very long time. Now, he started to get a little perturbed at this point and angered, because he says, my country has existed for over 1,000 years. I don't understand why I'm being questioned. I don't understand these maps that you're showing me. What is going on here? And I mean, rightfully so. If this gentleman is to be believed, which the TSA officers did say that he seemed to be legit. I don't know if they're called TSA officers over there, but you know what I'm saying, folks. They're the officers at the airport. They believed his story because he truly seemed nervous. He seemed not nervous in a way like he was lying, nervous in a way like, what is going on? I don't understand. He seemed really thrown off. So they had gotten security to give him a hotel room for the evening, stand watch while they figured out the passports, because they didn't know what to do with this guy, because you can't call your local ambassadors or anything of a country that you can't find. So they put him in a hotel room for the night while they looked further into the case. The next morning, when they came to the hotel room, he was gone. Absolutely vanished. Never once left the room. There was a guard outside the door. There was no other exit from the room. He just mysteriously vanished into thin air. And what makes it even more strange, folks, is the passport, identification, all the other documents the gentleman was carrying with him, and all of his belongings that were not with him because they were under lock and key from the security, had all of a sudden vanished as well. It was almost like he never existed, yet there were several eyewitness accounts of this gentleman at the airport. So it's very, very interesting, and as Daniel said, a very strange one-off, and that's what we're dealing with tonight, folks, the Man from Taured. So Dan, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting. Like I said, it feels isolated, because I know for a fact I've heard a lot of different stories about, humanoid-looking men who will appear in our society in public and interact with people and say that they're from like another planet or another star system and they're just visiting, things like that. But this is unique in the sense where the guy knows that he's from Earth, but he's just from like, from what I would perceive is to be like a parallel timeline, an alternate reality, maybe another dimension where things are a little bit different. To me, let's start here. He doesn't sound malevolent. He doesn't sound sinister. It doesn't seem like he's on some sort of like dangerous, top secret, gonna blow up America type of mission. It seems like a fluke glitch in the Matrix to me. So I think we should maybe start there.
No, I like that. And that's actually one of the points that I wanted to touch on tonight as well. That he didn't seem malevolent or like he had any type of ill intent of any sort. It seemed that he was being legit. He was a good-looking, well-put-together businessman in a suit with documentation that, from their accounts, all seemed to be 100% legit. It didn't look like someone had forged documentation or was trying to trick them. Everything looked as it would be a regular person's passport. I mean, legit. It just was in a style and way that no one had ever seen. So as Dan said, almost like there had to have been some sort of splicing or merging, or what I like to use the term folding, a fold over of a different dimensional paradox into ours, where there was a bleed through that.
A bleed, yeah.
Yeah, a bleed. He got on the plane as normal in his time and place, and he traveled. He landed as normal, but somehow along the way, he switched over into an alternate, dimension, and everything seemed the same to him. He got off the plane. He was going through the same airport he'd always gone through, but yet stuff was different. And, excuse me, folks, what I think there is that, as Dan and I had talked about several times, there are multiple dimensions side by side, multiple lives of us happening. So just as one can say that God is a fractaled being and we are all parts of God, you could say that we are all fractaled and there are many parts of us living many lives right now side by side. Every possibility that you can think of is happening right now along with this one. And if they cross over, it can seem very similar as normal life, but all of a sudden things are different because you almost reversed roles or switched it, or you now cross through to a different playing ground than you were previously at. So I think that's a very big possibility. Dan, why don't you elaborate a little bit more on the dimensional aspect and what your thoughts are?
Right. So I don't know if any of the listeners have ever heard of the TV show. It was on Sci-Fi Channel called Sliders. Really popular show. I personally loved it, want to rewatch it. But these college students, they create this technology that opens up like a portal or a wormhole into alternate versions of Earth, parallel versions. So we don't really want to sort of term it like another density or another dimension. It's the same dimension, but we're talking about a parallel or alternate reality to this one. So this guy could have had a bleed through or bleed over from his own version, which is similar enough to ours that he looks the same, he looks human, he sounds human, he has human credentials, and it was like a fluke glitch in the Matrix where at some point when traveling, he just slipped into our version of reality from his own, which is why he probably feels like as confused as the officiants were at the airport, because he has a routine. He probably travels for work, whatever, and he was as lost as we were when we met him, when we found him. Now, the one little alternative problem with that theory, because I'm theorizing here, is the name of where he came from is clearly different, even if he was pointing to that country or continent on a map. So that's a little bit of a problem there. But in an alternate version of reality, maybe even a very distant one to our own, that could just be the name of that country from where he's from. And that's why he still has a lot of human credentials and a passport, and he looked like a normal person. A little bit strange also that he speaks a lot of different languages, I guess, from what the reports say, which, I mean, not your average person fluently speaks a bunch of languages. I think, people oftentimes speak Spanish, English, maybe some German, maybe some French, Russian here and there, but like people don't just fluently speak like 6 languages. Even if you travel for work, the reports say that he was fluent in multiple languages. So that's a little strange too. So, but I do still believe that we're dealing with a parallel timeline to our own. Now, Garrett had mentioned before when we were talking about the concept there is the Mandela effect. Now, I don't know if Garrett and I have discussed this in detail on a previous episode, but the Mandela effect is where past events that we know historically to be a certain way are suddenly changed in the present. That could be the lyrics of a song, or maybe the ending of a movie, the color of a person's hair that is in mainstream media. Like strange little awkward fluke things will change through what we call the Mandela effect, and there's a lot of theories as to how that happens or why that happens. But I don't think that that's what we're dealing with here. I do believe that we're dealing with a bleed through from parallel and alternate versions of reality. So we've discussed, Ingrid Cold. We've discussed a lot of other characters who people will have reports of having met or encountered. Some even report these particular characters at different periods in history and at different areas of the world as well. Whereas this one guy, this Taured guy, is just this one fluke thing at the airport. So at the beginning of the episode, I referenced the Twilight Zone. Now, as an actor and a filmmaker myself, I always reference TV shows and movies because that's where I pull a lot of my experiences from. In the Twilight Zone, you have an episode where a plane, a crew on a plane comes from the past, and they request permission to land at this airport, and they check them out, and these people are from another time period, but from their perspective they got lost when they were flying, and then they ended up in the future for them. So I do believe that fluke things like that do happen, and they probably happen a lot more often than we think as a society, because I think that there's probably secret programs and servicemen that sort of cover these things up. So when they reach the public like this, it's probably leaked in some way, or the story snuck out and they couldn't contain it fast enough. But I think a lot more of these types of weird sort of bleeds happen between our reality and other versions that gets covered up and forgotten, just like our last episode was the Tartarian mud flood, which if you guys haven't heard that one, go back and listen to it. It's a very fascinating concept about an entire subculture, or what I call breakaway civilization, existed in our history and then vanished and was literally covered up, both figuratively and literally through mud. But I digress. So listen, we got a lot of people in the chat. Hello, everybody. I love seeing the comments and interacting with you guys. Tell us what you think right here live. What do you guys think? Do you think that this guy from Taured is from another dimension? Is he from another reality? Is he an alien? Is he maybe extraterrestrial? What do you guys think? Be curious to hear.
Absolutely. And while we wait for some of their answers, something I was thinking of, Dan, what are your thoughts? I mean, we often think of, let's say there are wormholes or tears that one can travel through to different either dimensions or realities of this current reality, which could be the case of this gentleman's story. But, when we link it to last episode of the Tartarian mud floods, it makes me think of, yes, maybe that was a cover-up of a place that once existed and somehow they made it, kind of just disappear in records. But what about this alternate thought here now that we're looking at this subject and crossing them? What if there was a way that not moving yourself through a portal or a wormhole to a different dimension where things are just slightly different, but what if there was a device where they could do that to everyone at one time? So, for instance, if they were to engage this device, all of a sudden the entire Earth, except, Tartaria, would then be transformed into a new world, but where that is now, Asia. And all the books have already been destroyed. Everything else has been taken away. So people might start to say, well, no, there was Tartaria. No, there wasn't. What are you talking about? So that is a way of using kind of the idea of both wormholes and dimensional portals along with the Mandela effect, because for the people who experience it, they would have moments where they would say, no, I know that Tartaria existed. No, it didn't. And you start to argue. And folks, if you're not familiar with the Mandela effect, this had all taken place with Nelson Mandela, where many people across the world had seen that while he was in prison all those years that he died, and that there was a funeral, there was a white casket, many, many, many accounts of people all with the same story, remembering hearing of the news and seeing the broadcast funeral of Nelson Mandela. But Nelson Mandela didn't die for many, many more years and died in 2013. And a lot of people, when they seen that, said, wait a second, no, he's already been dead a long time. And, some people could just say, well, you're confused. But no, a lot of people are like, no, I seen it too. And it starts to really, break your sanity up a little bit, where you start to question yourself in one of those moments where, no, I know for a fact I seen it. That links back to a story. There's a podcast that I listen to quite fluidly, and it's called Weird Darkness. And Weird Darkness had an episode about the Mandela effect a couple years ago, where they talked about someone, and I don't remember the exact facts, so pardon me, folks, but I'll give you the gist. This gentleman on business would always travel through this one kind of set-aside area. There's not a lot there along this highway, and he would always stop at the same gas station, get gas, run in, buy a couple things for the road, jump back in, and go. This was a constant thing over a few-year period. One day he's driving down the road, and when he starts to look up ahead towards the gas station, all of a sudden it's not there. And he's really confused by this as he slows down. It's not there. The only thing there is what looks like an old stone wall at one time that was there, but it looked abandoned for many years. Just that one part of the foundation. But up the road off to the left now, there is a different gas station. He stops at the gas station really thrown off and said, I don't understand. I was here a few weeks ago. What happened to the gas station? Did they rip it down? And the people there were perplexed and said that there was no gas station. What are you talking about? We are the only gas station along this stretch of road. And he kind of argued with them and said, no, I've stopped across the road dozens of times over there. And they said, sir, we've been here for years. There's never been a business that we know of that was there. All of a sudden telling him that what he's saying is not correct. He's confused, but he knows he was on the opposite side of the road at a different named gas station. But what makes it more bizarre is there was evidence of some type of structural foundation, even though the people at the gas stations themselves couldn't say what was there at one point in time. It had almost all of a sudden vanished. So that happens a lot in a lot of circumstances where people have either bleed-throughs or moments like that, where all of a sudden they wake up in the morning and things are very similar to their world, but all of a sudden strangely different. When researching this specifically, I came across a different broadcast talking about the Man From Taured, and they talked about a girl waking up in the morning in different pajamas than she's ever seen or worn before. She went to work. Her office had a different person's name on the door, but it was still the same company. She didn't recognize her coworkers, but her past work to get her into the building. She went to call her boyfriend to tell her what the hell's going on here. And when she pulled up her phone, his name and number was gone. And her boyfriend was listed as who her ex-boyfriend from years previously had been as her current boyfriend in her phone now. And she was just mind blown. And now what do? You're stuck in this new world that you don't recognize. But how do you get back through to the old one? Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like where this is going, and we have some interesting theories here in the chat I want to address as well. So just briefly touching on the Mandela effect, I studied it really heavy in 2017. And I think that there is forms of technology that exist beyond the awareness and the scope of civilians. And like, just to give you a direction of what I'm talking about, like CERN, for example. But I think that our shadow governments can change really big historical things to serve agendas. And the Mandela effect is a byproduct or a side effect of when something bigger is changed, little menial, insignificant things also have to change as well to support that new version of reality where something is different. So that's my perspective of the Mandela effect. But we have here a couple comments I'm interested to address here. Logan suspects possibly a form of technology. Now that could be, but that would also imply that this man from the airport, he was on a mission of some sort, and maybe that his shift into our version of reality, even if it's temporary, was deliberate, and he could have come here for a reason to do a mission, and maybe he used this technology to like literally teleport out of his hotel room, which is how he disappeared with all of his things without a trace. Either that or he's slipping in and out of control, which would kind of suck. But it could have been, he could have been playing it off. You know, he could be like a well-trained sort of like Secret Serviceman who is jumping to all of these parallel timelines to change things or study, which is an interesting concept. And so if he is using like a type of technology, then he knew exactly what he was doing, and he was not here by accident.
Well, you know, that's that. I'm going to come back to that. Finish what you were saying, but no, you just made me think of a really good thing I want to talk about.
Okay, hold that thought. So thank you, Logan, for that technology suggestion. And then this is this one personal right here, J-Ron. J-Ron in the chat, what's up? This one hits me home. J-Ron suggested, recently saw a movie called Another Earth. Well, funny you should mention that movie. I saw it when it first came out in 2012. It was written and produced by my favorite actress, Britt Marling. If you're unfamiliar with the actress Britt Marling, she's pertinent to this conversation. She is a very very creative and expressive actress who also produces television and film with her partner Zalbat Menglich. But you may know them better from their show on Netflix, The OA. Now, The OA is apropos as well because it is about a type of movement, almost like a type of channeling that they discover, where they can do these movements with a powerful intention that opens up a wormhole to a parallel version of their current reality. So that's why I'm mentioning Britt Marling and the OA, because it is dealing with alternate versions. And so if we talk about Another Earth, that was her first big breakthrough film that she produced on her own. Now, she had been acting already, but she really broke into the industry through that film, where she plays just an average college student. She's young, and one night driving home, she causes a terrible car accident where a woman and her daughter are killed, and then the dad, who was in the vehicle as well, he survived the accident. And so she basically commits vehicular manslaughter. And as a result of doing so, it changes her completely, and she goes into a depression. And flashing forward, suddenly out of nowhere, another Earth appears in the sky, like you would see the moon or the sun. And it's a very strange phenomenon to everybody. You know, science doesn't understand it, but the whole world is aware of it. And as I won't maybe spoil the film for you if you're interested in seeing it, but what we're dealing with in that movie is literally another version of Earth, a parallel version, sort of like just appearing out of nowhere and bleeding into our version of reality and then interacting with us. So that could be another good example of where this particular gentleman came from, whether it was deliberate or whether it was an accident. I do like that reference. That's a good example of what we could be dealing with. Get her to be a guest. Listen, you know what? That would be a dream come true. I would love that. But here, you know what? I'll hit her up. I'll ask her, hey, Britt, do you want to be on my show? We'll see what happens. But thank you for the comments, and those are good ideas. I like your guys' theories. Frater, what were you going to say about the Mandela effect and technology?
Well, so it's interesting because, as you said, did he deliberately pop in and out? Because one of the things that could make that true, and what makes it interesting, is he either did something along those lines that right before he landed, he popped into that line of the plane and came off naturally, just with, strange, passports and documents, either on purpose that he popped in during the flight and didn't, he was like a part of a mission, as you said, or undeliberately, and he didn't know that he had done so, somehow crossed a wormhole, because how did he, when he got on the plane, did he find the wormhole on the plane? That's the only logical explanation, is that he either did it on purpose or somehow during that flight they flew through something, but everyone else checked out on the plane but him. So how, was there a specific tear in reality in the seat he was at? Did they cross a certain point in the sky where it happened to be whoever was in that exact spot at that exact time, and it just happened to be him transported with someone else? I mean, it gets awfully strange, especially when you come up with the fact that he vanished from his hotel room in the middle of the night. Now, one of the things I had thought of, and then someone during my research had actually listed that in one of the articles I read, was it the Matrix correcting itself? And you kind of mentioned that earlier as well. As the Matrix, we always think of as like, okay, maybe this is similar to the movie and this is the Matrix, but what if the Matrix oversees many a world, and there's dozens of worlds like ours that are all the Matrix, and somehow still they do cross linear lines, and these bleed-throughs happen, but they try to fix the glitch as quickly as possible. Now, this gentleman somehow by mistake was switched here. They couldn't flip him out right in front of people, so they had to let it play its course, or they didn't catch it till afterwards. They made him vanish. The documents vanished. That's what to me sounds like, because two things vanished from two different locations, both under security surveillance, and locked away. Just mysteriously, no one ever heard from the guy again, and it's almost like it didn't happen. And it makes me think that somehow a glitch in the system happened, and they did their best to salvage it. So what if a few people know about it? They can't prove anything. And it just becomes another strange story that 50, 60, 70 years later, folks like us are talking about on the radio. That's what, one of the takes that I wanted to look at as well.
Yeah, I like that. And the more we talk about it, because we love to theorize on this show, the more it does kind of sound deliberate, though. Like, it sounds intentional, like maybe it was an accident that he ended up where he did, but that it's almost like he got, like, teleported or beamed out when wherever he came from and the people he works for realized that he slipped. He missed the mark somewhere. They're like, oh, he's stuck. Got to teleport him out, It's a lot to think about in terms of, is it deliberate? Was it an accident? Are we dealing with technology? Or is it purely a paranormal metaphysical phenomenon that is just simply a fluke, unexplainable thing?
Yeah, it's really it really puzzles me, this one. Like I said, it starts to bleed through into other episodes. So not to use that term again, but bleed through. It's starting to bleed through into other things, because it keeps making me draw back to the lost civilization of Tartaria. And in this episode, I think unmeaningfully, or unbeknownst to us, we didn't mean to set it up where they would be back to back. In fact, folks, we had an episode in between here where we were bringing on guests, as we sometimes do, to talk about their experiences, and that would have been 2 weeks ago on Thursday. And that night I had my second child. My wife gave birth to our second child, so we had to cancel that episode, and then we rescheduled that for next Thursday. So we will be doing 3 weeks in a row for everybody, so that's a good thing. But back-to-back episodes now are these two strange concepts of things popping in and out of place where they shouldn't be, things vanishing. And I think that somehow there is some semblance here, and it brings me to a point that we've looked at wormholes, we've looked at interdimensional crossover and bleed through foldings, we've looked at the Mandela effect, but what if somehow this could be the result of time travel, where we do know that Nikola Tesla's plans for a time machine and a lot of his other inventions and genius ideas had vanished after his death, and one of the things that he was working on was a time machine. And obviously, folks, if he was successful in creating that, we would never hear about it, because that would be the number one thing they would never want anybody to get their hands on, except the governments that had control that. What if these are interruptions in the original plan of time? Now, and what I'm getting at with this is, we look at as Dan talked about before, time is linear. We look at, the past, the future, now. But if everything is happening right now, that means 10 years from now, the you that you are 10 years from now is actually doing something right now. And in their reality, that they're the only them that exists. They have a past, which is you at this moment. They have a future and so forth. But every one of your seconds of reality believes that it's real in its own reality. And
right.
Soon as we change something right now in this current one, the you 10 years from now experiences, and the you 9 years, 8 years, 7 years, every you from this second forward would instantly have something changed with them around them, because you have now changed the fabric of reality now. So that could be a possibility as well, as something affected the ripple of reality and instantly changed for a lot of people. Different things happened, and whatever was done caused this gentleman to then not be where he would have, and somehow catapulted into this plane pretty much in what seemed like a natural reality to everyone until they questioned it. But somehow that was the result of a ripple effect.
Right. That very well could be. It's just a fluke thing,
Certainly something to ponder on. So, folks, let's see if there's any other comments out there. We have J-Ron coming in again. Let's see here. It says, "Thank you for the shout-out, Dan. I appreciate it." And he says that he's seen it. Then his next comment says, "Other than YouTube, my entertainment is DVDs from my local library. I will watch the ads that are on before the DVD feature, but in fast forward, I just try to catch the title and write it down. It works well for a crap load of flicks I have never heard of." That is true. Yeah, you don't want to have to watch all the ads, so sometimes just jotting them down, going back, picking out a random one. I'm a big movie guy. I like to just jump into random films, and give them a shot. Don't know what they're about, who's in it, don't give a damn. Let's just throw it on. Sometimes they are horrible, but every now and again you catch a golden gem. I do that a lot with documentaries.
I don't know if this is exactly the situation that we're dealing with here, but another movie that I could reference that kind of promotes the thought in that direction, it's with Matt Damon. It came out in 2011, and it's called The Adjustment Bureau. Did you ever see that one?
I've heard that name. I don't think I've seen it, though.
All right, it's about a secret organization, and you could think about them kind of like the Men in Black. And what they do is they work behind the scenes. We're not supposed to know that they're there or know that they exist. But the Adjustment Bureau in this movie, they watch the timeline and the directional path of people that they're supposed to go through and experience in their life, and sort of manipulate reality around them to make sure that they kind of hit the marks and experience the things that they're supposed to experience in their lifetime. Now, that's probably not what we're dealing with here, but I wanted to mention that movie because the organization of the Adjustment Bureau could be kind of like what this guy is doing if he's from an alternate timeline where the name of his country is different than it is here. But he's still very human, and he speaks a lot of human languages, things like that. And he seemed to have disappeared and vanished without a trace. This could be, maybe he's like some sort of Secret Service kind of, maybe reality manipulator, Men in Black type of guy, where he was on a mission, and like we were discussing, he got stuck, and he's just one of those guys that kind of works behind the scenes. So that's another theory that I wanted to throw out there based on a movie called The Adjustment Bureau. So you guys can look that one up too if you're interested in a concept like that. So I always like referencing movies and TV shows to kind of give you guys an example of what I mean. So that's why I'm glad here in the chat room tonight we had a couple suggestions about some technology and another movie as well. A lot of theories, and I think that they're all valid. I think that whatever your perspective is on this, whatever your beliefs are, we don't have the total answer as to what this phenomenon means. Where if you go back and listen to old episodes, I'm a very matter-of-fact guy, and I come from a metaphysical background where I tend to have like the answer for everything. But sometimes flukes like this happen, and I don't know. I don't have the total explanation, but we have talked about some pretty pretty interesting theories and some concepts as far as what it could be or how this has happened in the past. There's these icons that pop up like Ingrid Cold. We did a whole episode about Ingrid Cold. He's like from the Mothman prophecies. The Mothman, that there's this entity, this being who is humanoid that people have experiences with and encounters with, and then he vanishes, and he seems to be maybe even supernatural in a sense. So with this Taured guy, we know that he speaks multiple languages. We know that he has all the credentials to travel legally. We know that he can seemingly teleport out of his apartment if he needs to, or his hotel that he's in. So there definitely is a paranormal sort of supernatural element to this character as well. All I can say is, wherever you are, Taured man, I hope you got home. I hope you found your way back.
It's curious to wonder, what did happen to him? Was it a glitch in the Matrix and they pulled him back? Was he on a mission and just filled out his mission and went back where he was from? It's hard to say. I also look at the fact of two other possibilities is, as you mentioned, Ingrid Cold, did the men in black find this man? They instantly were aware of something happened and they showed up and caused that man to disappear, unbeknownst to everyone else. Or I don't know. I mean, is it something that they caused, him to vanish, or is it something that was placed in our reality to cause upset and to fractal our sense of normality? Could it be that something threw him there and then made him vanish because they had a little window of opportunity to blast us with something that for the people who did engage with him now would never be the same? Know that something strange, always think about it, talk about it. People like us would talk about it, and it's just one more red pill to help us break out of the Matrix. I mean, you go to wonder, is that a possibility as well? As he was on a mission, but the mission was to pop him in, make him vanish, and be a seed that would grow into doubt of what is around us.
I love that, dude. I love that. Like, he only existed so that we would be having this discussion right now. And we're thinking outside the box. We're theorizing on things that are outside of the realm of our, mass consensus congruent way of physics. And I love that. Maybe things like that only happen to promote thought. Like you said, a red pill, plant the seeds so that we have the discussions. We look at reality from a different way. We consider things that are greater than we understand.
Well, yeah, because could it be someone like Morpheus in the Matrix? And he and his crew planted a speck of code in the system that this man wasn't actually even real. He was almost like an illusion, a hologram, where he seemed real to the people in that reality, and they interacted with him, and as it ran its course, he just vanished because he never was there to begin with. He simply was a red pill, and it woke up those around him, and everyone in the airport talking about it, and security and the people at the hotel whenever they questioned who had access to the room. Well, no one was in the room. I stood guard all night, and the butler and everyone never went up, and so everyone starts to talk about, did you hear about this man that vanished the other night? And person after person, and here it is. Like I said, this happened in 1954, so we're talking a long time ago, and we're still talking about it. This and many other things, I believe, whether naturally happening, abnormally happening, or purposefully happening, are small slivers of the red pill.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's where you've got me. That's my opinion. That's where my belief is. That's my answer right there, dude.
I think we nailed it.
The catalyst.
The catalyst of tonight's episode. Well, folks, if you have ideas out there and you want to share them with us, please never hesitate. You can hit us at many different locations, one of which being our Gmail account. Send us an email at celestialoddities@gmail.com. Again, that's celestialoddities@gmail.com. You can add our Celestial Oddities PairOfNormal Guys podcast Facebook group page. We always suggest to do so because not only do we share our episodes in there, we do put up different, posts and asking for engagement, what kind of episodes you want to see next, which ironically, this topic tonight was requested by several of our listeners out there. Me and Dan did not pick this. This came from you guys, so thank you. We have some other great episodes coming up here over the next few weeks, which we will jump into in just a moment. But you can add us on there, talk to us on there. You can add Daniel's Facebook page, my Facebook page, and interact with us. We love to hear from you. So if you have ideas of what you want to see us do, not do differently, don't be shy. If you do have experiences with the paranormal out there and you want to share those with us, whether anonymously and we read it off during the show, come on the show anonymously, or you do want to give your identity, any which of the three is fine. We do have specific episodes like next Thursday's episode where we title Oddworld Listeners' Encounters, where people will call in and talk about what it is they've experienced. Me and Dan, or Dan and I, will ask questions and give our takes on it as well. I'm really excited for that one, Dan.
Me too. I've got some people lined up that are going to call in with their own unique paranormal, supernatural stories, share them with us, and then we'll give them our perspective and our theories on those. And so if it goes well, we have enough people interested, we might make that a regular thing, guys.
Absolutely. We have that, and then my list on my phone just jacked up. After that, I can't remember exactly what the topic is after that one. I think it might be organism, what was it, organism 52? B52, something weird. So it was requested by the fans.
Oh, okay, yeah. That one is coming up, and then the Missing 411.
Yeah, Missing 411, folks, is coming up later in the season, which will be one of the bigger episodes for Daniel and I. If you haven't watched the documentaries on Missing 411, I suggest it. I watch a lot of documentaries. That is one of the most fascinating ones I've seen in quite some time.
So good.
So good. There's actually two of them, but the main one, I don't remember which one it was called. I have a horrible memory on those things, but it was phenomenal. I mean, it was very in-depth. I actually just got done watching, and we'll wrap up here in a moment, but I just got done watching a documentary this morning about a gentleman who was an engineer in the military who built underground bases for them, and talks about the fact of when he went down into the tunnel on an elevator shaft that they had built, he came across two alien greys, and talks about the fact that when you were within like 30 yards of them, the stench of them was so bad that it was repulsive, and they were actually hostile, and he had to pull out his pistol, and he says that he shot and killed two of these alien greys, and one of them actually shot him back, and he was hurt with some type of force that came from its chest of a blue light that just cranked him like a baseball bat to the face.
Yeah.
And the gentleman who was with them in the military, who was an officer, was actually killed in that bunker, and he started sharing a lot of things that were not to be shared with the public, and the same as William Cooper did whenever he released the book Behold a Pale Horse. He was executed in a strange way. He was found in his house, murdered, choked to death with his own catheter cord very tightly, and they wrote it as a suicide, which is really strange. Most people don't kill themselves by strangling themselves with a catheter cord. But, it was one of those people where he did have credentials with the military. He worked for them. He was a known engineer. His father was a top secret agent of our government, and actually was known to be involved in a lot of UFO activity and missions. And it was a pretty fascinating little documentary. It was on Netflix. I don't remember the name of it. Once again, like I said, folks, I'm horrible with names, but check it out if you get a chance. It was pretty interesting.
I've heard of that story as well, and we could do a whole other episode about this. We have talked about it in the past, but there are hundreds of extraterrestrial races that we know nothing about that exist in the inner Earth, in tunnel systems, and it's a whole nother episode, guys, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting because they touched a lot on what we had talked about, Dan, where they do talk about underground tunnels and civilizations, and they had this drawn-up picture of about 15 to 20 different alien races that our government is in contact with or knows about, not above us in space or in spaceships, but below us in caverns and in civilizations in Agartha and in Hollow Earth, which is pretty deep.
I'd love to talk about Agartha. We've got Telos, Lemuria, Atlantis, but I watch a lot of the Super Soldier Talks, James Rank on YouTube, and he had a guest on his show one time that blew my mind, was talking about how there's whole civilizations of races inside the planet that just one of them, any one race, is 3 times the population size of the surface civilization.
That's crazy.
3 times the size of.
And we think, when we start to think of that, we think like, how is that possible? You know, the Earth's only so big. How could that many people be crammed down there? But how big is Earth truly, folks? The thing is we go back to that time and time again, whether you're a flat earther or not, whether you're a hollow earther or not, we just don't know, because all day long you can tell me how big the world is because of your understanding of it. But where did you gain your understanding? You were taught from others and read from books. All of the research you've done is only as good as the research you've done, because unless you walked from one side of the planet personally yourself and traveled every in and out, you have no clue how big the Earth is. We have no idea how big Antarctica truly is, and what lies across that ice. And I think if we were to travel miles and miles deep across the ice and the glaciers of the Antarctic, I think we would find wild, wild things that we were told do not believe, or do not exist, excuse me.
No, I get you. And I have even weirdo, strange beliefs that we won't talk about tonight, but that, like, all of our physical reality only exists because of our awareness of it. And outside of our immediate 3D senses, nothing is there. So is the Earth round or flat? No. Yeah and yes, because is there bazillions of races and aliens underneath the ground? How big is it down there? Probably infinitely big, without any end, because nothing really exists outside of our immediate awareness. So it's all a matter of your perception and what your beliefs are. I mean, there could be an infinite number of civilizations and aliens, you know, underground, and maybe if you want to talk about, like, if you have to keep it in the box of physics, then maybe, like you said, we don't know how big it is down there. And maybe when people are going down into tunnel systems, they could be going through portals and vortices that we know nothing about, that maybe have they give you no example, or they give you no notice that you've even gone through it. And now all of a sudden you go into a tunnel system, and now you're in Agartha, which is, we could talk about, like, do a whole episode about Agartha, where they say that they have their own sun and their own sky and their own clouds and their own forests and rivers and oceans inside the planet Earth. And maybe that's only possible because we're going into, like, portals and wormholes that take us into a whole other aspect of reality, which is how, you know, inside the Earth can contain so many other civilizations and aliens, because it's not like maybe some of them are physically down there like you and I are solid blood and bone, but maybe also we're going into whole other densities where they're on another frequency band, and there's a whole other, you know, Earth in there. So weird stuff to end the night on. We want to get you guys thinking and let you know kind of where the direction of the show is going to go for season 2. It's going to get a little weird.
Certainly is. And it's going to get weird as hell, folks. And just one thing I want to touch on, since we did mention and we talk about Flat Earth, and we are bringing on a special guest, David Weiss, who is a known Flat Earther, on Thursday, August 19th. So since we mentioned that, I wanted to caveat into that. He has been on several television shows and broadcasts, is a professional in the field of Flat Earth theory. So it'd be great to pick his brain. We are getting many messages here on our stream. We got one here. It says Google tunnel cities in Turkey and tunnels under the Antarctic, under the Sphinx, and more. And yes, there are a lot of tunnel systems, including, as you mentioned, the Sphinx. They still have no idea what the tunnel system under the Sphinx was meant to be. Was it supposed to connect to the Great Pyramid? Was it just a maze to get, treasure hunters lost and trapped in? They do not know. Was it some type of tunnel to lead to other places never found? Hard to say, folks, but let us know your thoughts and theories. We do want to thank you for tuning in to another great episode of Celestial Oddities. And Dan, as always, it was a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, man, this was a blast. I'm glad to be back into the swing of things, and congratulations on your new edition.
Well, thank you.
Listen, guys, thank you for engaging, and hello to everybody in the chat. We will be back next week with special call-ins, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Thank you for being here.
All right, guys. We'll catch you next time on Pair of Normal Guys podcast. Take care.